Hello and welcome to today's Rise of the False Gods book study. And we are continuing, missed you over the weekend. We're continuing on the previous chapter, which is the crux of the matter, the central core of what this is all about. I wrote this book because after years of studying metaphysics, I could see in the news, I could see in people's lives, I could see in the lives of the people that I counsel and in my own life how the metaphysics work and why it doesn't work when we're not living in accordance with principle. So that's why I call this a guide to transformation through illumination. So just if you're new to this study tonight, please know that you can go to YouTube and look up Rise of the False Gods and pick up all the previous messages. You can also click on subscribe and make sure you never miss one. I invite you to comment as you go along. I can't see all the comments, but when I see a comment and it's helpful, I'll jump right in with there if I can. And if you have any questions, be sure to put them in. I may not be able to answer them tonight. I might not even see them, but if I see them, I'll do my best to answer them. So tonight is, I've got to tell you, it's been a very challenging day. It's the daily gut punch with the news. It's like you look around and you go, please, God, tell me somewhere there is good news. And that's really challenging, especially on days like today. But I still know that it all comes down to metaphysical principle. I know everything is going to work out eventually, but there's the question that eventually, how are we going to spend the time between now and when it all works out? Well, the way we're going to do it is by doing our best to be a participant in the process. So I am on page 36 right now. I just turned the page, and we talked a little bit in the last session, about our oneness, that we're all one. And I know that doesn't always set well with people because they think that means that we don't have any individuality, and that's not the way it is. So let's take a look. And again, I'm going to read because that's the most efficient way to make sure I don't skip over anything. I do recommend you get the book. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle. You can write to me and I'll send you a copy. I'll put a little note in there for you. So, it says at the top of the page, separation or isolation is contrary to divine law. And this is so true. We think about it. Everything works together for the good of the whole. There isn't a thing that isn't working toward good. For example, a flower. A flower isn't just a random thing that sprouts up. Every bit of its life has a purpose. It's beautiful, and yet it attracts the bees, and the bees take the pollen, and the pollen pollinates things, so they grow, and they make honey, and who doesn't like honey? And it goes on, and the purpose is even in death, in this experience, that flower is going to decompose, and what's it going to do? It's going to enrich the soil, and therefore the next flowers that come are even going to be more beautiful. That reminds me of when my father used to make us rake leaves. Leaves do break down and they enrich the soil. Maybe too many leaves doesn't do a good job, but we had to rake those leaves. And the way I used to think about it is, we got crying out loud, Dad, God put the leaves there. Let God take the leaves away. Eventually they would. We got more focused on having beautiful lawns, though, didn't we? And we even chased away some of the things that were really helping our planet be healthy. Let's go back to divine law. So, because we are all one and we all work together for the good of the whole, just like that flower, see, that doesn't mean we're homogenized into an inconsequential glob. To be one and a part of the oneness, the way we express it in unity is that we're one, but we're individualized expressions of the oneness. That flower is an individualized expression of life. It is beautiful for a purpose. It has a bright color. It attracts the bees so they'll come get the pollen. And yet, it does more. It enhances our lives. But you see, we try to play God. I go into that elsewhere, so we're not going to go there tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about our oneness. In unity, we call it oneness in diversity. That means we're all one. We're one with each other. We're one with God. We're one with all creation. But each one is totally unique. Even identical twins can be identical in many ways. I know, because I have a set. Yet they each have their own individual expression of life. As identical as my twins are, and as they've grown into, when they've developed into men, now in their 50s. They're older than me now. They are. But as they've grown, they've developed different expressions, in the way of living. One of them wears a beard all the time, and the other one never wears a beard. And it's just that, but they are still identical twins, but unique. So it doesn't matter how much you might look like somebody, sound like somebody. Have you been told, you look just like your mother? And you go, don't say that. I say that, but it's not because my mother wasn't pretty. My mother was a very attractive woman. I'm sure she still is. But you always want to be yourself, right? You don't want to look like somebody else. You want to be yourself. Going back to our oneness, our interconnectedness. We like to think we're independent, but in truth, we are interdependent. There's a lot of people talk about going to live off the grid. I'm going to live off the grid. They're not going to need anything from anybody. Like they're going to be an island on the planet. But then something happens. And they need something. They really need it. Maybe like a doctor. Maybe there's an accident. Whatever it is. Maybe they need food. Their crops didn't come. We need each other. And we're meant to work together. I have always loved the Disney ride Small World. You know it. It's a small world after all. Oh, I've been going on that ride for probably 40 years. And I still love to go on it. Why? It expresses our oneness in diversity. Walt Disney was a very smart man. He knew these things. And as you go through that ride and you get to see all the different people from all the different cultures, my heart just shines with the love for all the different cultures, for all the different colors, for all the different religions and races. And it's just a part of the oneness that we are. It is a small world. And we have come together to take care of this planet together. That's what it's all about. We are mutually accountable and collectively responsible to each other. Right now, we're battling those fires that are the result of climate change. We're not taking care of the oneness we are, but we can. That's why I wrote this book. So if we go back, deep within each of us, I think we know that we are connected by love, appreciation, and oneness in spirit. In America, we have declared a separation of church and state. Now, we did that. And we did that for very good reason. Why? Because the oneness was negated for one. The one who wanted the human that wanted to lead that, whether that was a bishop or a priest or a king. You know, at one time, of course, pharaohs were considered gods, and kings were considered, royalty was considered like gods in their own. That's why they call him Lord. Not like Lord the God, but Lord, a person of great power. And as you know, that's Baal. That's the nature god that wants to have the ego running the whole thing. So what happened in the church was that they would put a king in charge. They would be, you know, blessed by a priest that you're in charge of the country and everything, but not necessarily being godly people. Things did not work out the way they were supposed to. At one time in the Catholic Church, if you had enough money, you could buy a position of being a bishop. You didn't have to know anything about being a bishop. You could just buy it. And it's those things that led to the separation of church and state. One of the reasons, and I say one of the reasons because it wasn't all the reasons, if you study some history, one of the reasons we came here was freedom of religion. We did not want anyone telling us how to pray or who to pray to. That denies the oneness we are. Because just because someone worships in a different way than we do doesn't mean we're not worshiping the same essence, the same energy that is God, okay? A funny thing I didn't know until I went to seminary is that that we came here, you know, the Pilgrims came here for freedom of religion, and as it wasn't long after they got here, of course, they wanted all the natives, the indigenous people, to be their faith, right? So they did exactly what they said they were running away from. Did we ever do that? Probably. So the general population, however, did not want a religious figure running the government, especially if that religious figure was a different religion of what they believed in. I remember when JFK got elected, there's lots of Catholics in this country, and I don't think there was a one of them that didn't vote for him. Along with the fact that I was 18 at that time and couldn't vote for him, but I sure liked him. But I liked him for all the wrong reasons. I liked him because he was good looking. Yeah, you don't want to vote like that. We're coming into voting season, folks. Principle before personality. Okay? Don't you forget it. To achieve a high level of spiritual understanding, we have to comprehend a paradox, okay? A paradox is a self-contradictory proposition. Ooh, that's kind of hard, isn't it? A self-contradictory proposition, or a person or thing exhibiting what appears as contrary characteristics. Don't worry, I got an example for you. How about the phrase, the only thing that never changes is change? It's a paradox, okay? What we may see may not be as it appears. We tend to think this or that about something, but it is really this and that. How many times it's this or that? This or that divides us. We want to be united. We want to be a part of the whole. We also want to understand that we don't necessarily have the answer to everything, smart as we think we are. Okay. Jesus, not everything is black and white or black or white. It's a matter of black, white, gray. Jesus frequently addressed paradoxes. You may wonder, how can two things that are opposite both be true? Want to know? Okay. Consider Jesus' teaching on the Sabbath. Now, the religion, the Hebrew faith, the Jewish people, said that they were following to the letter of the law, that the Sabbath is to be kept holy. And on the Sabbath, you do no work, right? So, one time, Jesus' disciples were caught picking grain on the Sabbath. They were hungry. It was there. But Jesus taught them by saying, if it is the Sabbath and you're not supposed to do any work, what do you do if your donkey falls into quicksand? Do you let him drown? What if it's your kid? No. You go and get it out. So on the one side of the paradox, I believe we need that day of rest as much as we need food and water and shelter to exist. The very breath, we need to rest. In our world, we are constantly bombarded with input, with activity, with concerns and emotions. And it's so easy to get so involved in what's going on down here in the lower two quadrants of consciousness that we don't take the time to lift up and rest and renew and remind yourself that there is that one presence and one power in the universe and in our lives. God, the good, omnipotent. God's got it. And when we take that time, that Sabbath, that pure time to turn off all the stuff of this world, we come back stronger than ever. We really do. And that's why I so encourage you. Sabbath is important. It is a spiritual principle. And at the same time, there are times when you have to do something else. When you have to get your donkey out of the quicksand. When you have to handle an emergency. There's nothing wrong. The thing is to stay in balance. So don't look at everything. I invite you. I can't tell you because that's not my job. I invite you to consider, especially if you're grounded in one opinion, don't think it has to be this or that. Consider the possibility it's this and that. And as we learn to consider this and that, we will open the door to coming together again. And what did Jesus say? He told them the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. See? He was saying it's for our good. So we will be strong and healthy and peaceful and prosperous because we took time not to get too immersed in lower consciousness. Okay. He did not negate the law. The law stands. The law is the same. And sometimes it's required for the highest good to do something else. We benefit when we rest and renew. Both of those statements are true. And in truth, we cannot separate church or religion, but you look at it differently. It's not church like the church, but it's like church and politics, state church and state, sorry. Um, you cannot separate church or religion and state, because religion represents our moral compass. It is that which we know to be good and true and just and for the good of the whole. Well, the state or the government was created to assure the good of the whole. So we can't have just what we call the head, which is the intellect of the law or the government. We also need to have the heart, which is the deep understanding and the meaning. Okay? This is where we get ourselves in trouble. We created the separation of church and state on a human level for reasons of our own understanding. But if we came up higher, our country was, especially our country, was created with a higher purpose of equality and justice and freedom for all. And I know that there's a lot of talk about in the beginning, the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, blah, 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 they had slaves. Well, you know what? We're growing. And I hope you're growing. And that you have looked at your life, look at yourself 10 years ago, look at yourself now. Have you grown? I sure have. If you haven't grown, better think again, because we all came here to learn and grow. Many years ago, I was a participant in the Dale Carnegie course. If you've never taken that course, I encourage it. And it's pricey, but actually, I looked it up online one day, and it's not far from the price was when I took the course like 40 years ago. But I learned something very important. In the course, there were like 22 participants and 3 leaders or co-leaders or whatever. And in the first time I went there, I put everybody in their little pigeonhole. Don't say you don't do it, because you do. What it is actually, again, we've talked about it before. It's a part of our survival instinct. Who do we think is safe? Who don't we think is safe? And so we have made a science out of it, I don't like the way you look. I think you're old. That is a human trait that comes in the lower human consciousness. As we evolve and grow beyond that, we don't do that anymore. But a big piece of this I got back in that class. Each week, for 15 weeks, every single person in the class spoke for 2 minutes on whatever topic. What I learned from my little pigeonholing of everybody on that first night, I fell in love 24 times. I fell in love with the leaders. I fell in love with the people in the group. Why? Because I got to know them. We're in a place right now where we are so divided. And what do? We put the difference that we have right in front of us. Nope. I don't like you. You're one of them. And I know we vary greatly and for our own very good reasons. But we have to get past that. We have to look for things that support our oneness. Oh, I am not telling you to give up your opinion. I am telling you to always make sure that you are grounded in what you know, and it's a fact, not an opinion, and that it's a truth and not an opinion. Because opinions, I always said opinions are like noses. Everyone's got one, and most of them smell, right? So, getting back to this, we want to get to know people. We want to get to understand them. We must weave ourselves back together, despite our political differences, despite our lifestyles, despite our color, religion, race, the whole socioeconomic level. Okay? We have to come to the oneness that we want to be. Here's it's a flat out. You're not going to like this, but it's true. If we don't change, it's going to get worse. And it's not going to stop getting worse until we change. And the change is possible. And we can do it. And honest to God, and I mean that when I say honest to God, I'm not taking the Lord's name in vain. I mean it. Honest to God, it's easy. Once you practice it, once you learn it, you can become a beacon of light for other people. Have you noticed that every time there is a mass shooting, they say one thing about the shooter very frequently? Think about it for a minute. What's the one thing that you hear over and over about someone that did a mass shooting or a mass murder? Anybody going to make a comment on that? Say what they think it is? Going to be shy? Okay. Well, then I'll tell you. He was a loner. He was a loner. See, we are meant to be connected. We are all meant to be connected. To enjoy love, relationships, friends, family, to tolerate the ones we don't like, and to learn the lessons they may come to teach us, like patience, understanding, holding our tongue, if that's necessary. We are one. That is the crux of the matter. I am inviting you with all my heart to go through your next days looking at just how we are one. You're going to find that there will be fundraising sites coming up for the folks who are suffering from the fires. The devastation, we can't even imagine it. And if anyone that watches this is out there, Lord, please know that we are praying with you and that we will be there. That brought to mind, when I'm in Connecticut, and when Connecticut and New Jersey and New York had the most soaring rates of COVID, that I remember Governor Cuomo talking about how they needed ventilators. And he said to them, please send me the ventilators. Please, if you can spare ventilators, send them to me. And I promise you, I will provide for you when we're past this and you're not. And that's exactly what he did. He made sure they had what they needed. Tomorrow, I invite you to look for someone that has a need and to find a way to address it. Because as you do, you are practicing our oneness. And that's the crux of the matter. Tomorrow, we start looking at sin. How juicy is that? I hope you join me, and we'll look forward to another wonderful class. Thanks for being with me tonight. And remember, you can subscribe on YouTube. You can watch all the past videos you want. And let's get growing.